You're listening to Shall We Unpack This? With your host, Leilani Carrasco. Hey everyone, welcome back to the SWAT podcast. I have decided that this is going to be the last episode, maybe until the fall or for a while. It makes sense right now for me to slow down and take a break and kind of reassess and just go with the flow. And I feel like I'm very much in my just do and don't try to figure out phase. An idea comes to my mind or an urge comes to me. I know now I can do it without having to explain it or try to keep it going, to try to maintain it or turn it into something that it may not be destined to turn out to be. So if that resonates with you, this episode will just be another confirmation of, yes, do the thing. The figuring out part, it'll figure itself out. And if anything, show you surrender. I had mentioned wanting to share about my faith in a future podcast. I'm going to share a little tidbit in the area of surrender. I grew up not even in a religious household, but like a rules and what do you call it? Just like forcing structure, maybe forced holiness. My grandfather was not mentally well. And at the time, I don't think we fully realized that. All we knew is that he had notions that he was the Son of God, based on some experiences he had, some dreams he had, just an inflated sense of self as far as being like a prophet. I don't think he thought he was the Messiah, but he did think he was some sort of prophet. And no religion was good enough. He was almost his own religion. And I kind of joke that grandfather probably would have been a cult leader had he had charisma. But he scared a lot of people away. And I remember growing up with lots of rules. No radio, no TV, no makeup, no earrings, no jewelry, long dresses, no make-believe. Make-believe was such a big word growing up. It's like, oh, don't say make-believe around grandfather. Don't use words like I can't wait. We're going to get in trouble for that. And so he lived across the street from us, and he was my babysitter. And I remember there was no pretend, no toys. And I would need to find some way to entertain myself all day. I spent the first hour probably crying because I was scared to be there alone with my mom and my grandma all at work. Grandfather didn't work. He didn't drive. He destroyed his identification years before. And so I would go in my grandma's room. They lived on separate sides of the mobile home. She had a whole set of jars, canisters filled with jewelry. And sometimes the jewelry had like animals, wooden animals and little dolls and stuff. So her jewelry became my toys. And she had these two fancy pens that you'd kind of twist to get the pen to come out. And it had like a tassel at the top. And there was a green one and a peach one. And those were my Barbies. Yeah. And so I played for a long time with just grandma's pens and her jewelry. Those were my toys since make-believe and talking about toys, bringing toys. Those were all kind of, I guess, graven images or idols. And so this mindset of rules, figuring out a very mental faith, um, preaching, anger, judgment, just kind of seeped into our family um, mindset, I believe. It was very harsh, kind of an eye roll when it comes to grace and the word shame being used a lot. Shame on you, that's shameful. A lot of let's not get too big for our britches and let's stay almost self-loathing. That is what I took from our faith growing up. And just with my personality and my own experiences along the way, the good works or being perfect, being holy, and in a way having to force experiences, force goodness, a lot of forcing holiness and purity. I found God through a church that I was invited to through my sister's friend. It was one of those, I went to VBS, Vacation Bible School. Hey, there's a little girls program on Wednesdays. You can have something to do in the summers and be with people your age. Hey, there's a summer camp in Cloudcroft. All those things lured me in. I just kept going. And then that kind of just became my second home. And it wasn't because I loved theology or even Christianity or loved the Bible. It was a place that I could be somebody else, that I wasn't despised. I felt loved. I was validated. I was hugged. I was talked to. I was listened to. People cried with me and were on my side. And that was something I hadn't experienced with my family. And so it became more about a place to be received. But I found that at a time when I was very scared and lonely. I went to camp and I accepted Jesus for whatever that means. After a very traumatizing year, that was the year I was in a car accident and started to exhibit post traumatic OCD type trauma. And I was exhausted. Everything had to be just right. And I gained a whole new level of different fears. Suddenly, I had unexplainable fears of fire, um, motors, different things like that. And so life became scarier. The world was suddenly very scary and needed to be controlled just so I could calm the fuck down and have some sort of something make sense. That was also the year that Fred had some of the worst temper flares, throwing dishes, breaking glass, breaking windows, yelling, and and so it developed in me this hyper vigilance. I remember just growing up being so afraid all the time and having to be so on. So when I went to camp and they're like, hell is scary. Here is somebody that will always be with you and comfort you. It kind of seemed like getting insurance. This is a good bargain. Like, this is something I need in my back pocket. Here's my opportunity. Yes, I have accepted Jesus. And now I can have something when I'm really scared and I am so alone at home from that trauma of that year. And because here was this religion that presented rules, oh man, it was like a perfect recipe for I will control every bit of my life and try to control other people based on these rules of Christianity because I need rules right now. I need structure. And this is a great opportunity. I would tell myself, okay, I want a holy, perfect life. So when the bus picks me up, I will start my prayer the minute I sit down, and it's got to follow this certain path. And sometimes I get distracted and think, oh no, we're heading to the curve where I usually pray these exact words. So I have to kind of like catch up. So you can see how like that obsessive compulsiveness kind of fed into the religion aspect of like, I have to get everything just right. There is no reason why I can't force this into possibility. I did it once, I can do it again. And it very much became in my hands like this. I will make my life holy, or I will make it good because that feels safe. That will be safe. Fast forward through a lot of, um, I guess, hurting people by being so judgmental. I once had a friend ask me, was it malicious? No, I wasn't being malicious. I was just trying to do the right thing and save all my friends and um, live up to these rules. So, college and early 20s, very early 20s, was just me being very frustrated and me forcing things. It was like having my jaw clenched all the time. My spiritual jaws were always clenched, and I'd see people just having miracles happen to them or just seemed so loved and so blessed. And I'm like, I can make things happen, and yet I can't make that happen. I can't force somebody to give me a prophetic word and tell me what they see in me that's special. I can't force magic that seems to be in other people's lives. I can't even force being relaxed and just go with it. It's like, I don't know how to do that without totally just faking it. What's really interesting is that I was married at the time and started to feel so disconnected from our church. That was when our church really started to get weird and creepy and just, I hated being there. And worship felt like calculus. We were just being berated to worship harder. We're not being passionate enough. The services would just go on and on and on. And they would be so draining, not only because they lasted so long, but because I don't want anyone to think that I'm not passionate for the Lord. So I'm going to have to force myself. I'm going to give an offering of praise. Is that what it was called? An offering of praise. Go down and dance my heart out and like roll around on the ground and play the game, act as if it's happening, um, to, if anything, pass the time. What else am I going to do? Might as well pretend something amazing is happening. And just believing as though it were, instead of accepting, yeah, I'm not feeling it today. Forcing myself to be so ecstatic when really I was tired. And it took a lot out of probably everybody that went there. And yet we did not feel love there anymore. We felt so burdensome to people. And there were a lot of situations where we were just like, I can't believe somebody actually treated me that way. So we just stopped. We stopped finally going. And I was kind of burnt out. I was bitter. Like, we gave a lot to that church and nobody gave a shit about us. And I'm in that phase of early 20s when friends are moving away and friends are flaky. Friends are just kind of finding their place in the world. We're all just kind of doing our best as early 20s, 20-year-olds. And I just didn't want to be around people. But my husband at the time had a group of friends that were like, hey, man, come on out to this church down here. It's a little church on the corner, but it's a really loving place. And they're bringing a guy that does miracles. And there's going to be like a healing service. And This was after a few years of healing church where they've kind of like forced people to admit that they were healed, and you could tell they weren't. It was like, I don't want to play that fucking game. I'm already over this, and I'm over everybody that's going to be there. I don't want to go. And that was so opposite of my attitude in college and even in a couple years before that of wanting to be so good and wanting to, not share my real thoughts because that's evil, that's flesh, that's not good. I'm going to get in trouble. A lightning strike's going to hit me. So it was like, you know what, whatever. I'll go because apparently this means a lot. I really don't even know why I was there because I was pissed being there. And I'd been having some trouble with my wrist. I had a catch. It wasn't a big thing, but we had helped a couple years prior. We'd helped a family salvage some lumber for their coffee shop. They really wanted to try to use materials that were already laying around, but we had to get the nails out of them. And some of them were in there. And, as a young person, you think you can just strong arm anything. And I hurt it. I tweaked that wrist trying to do too much. And it always kind of caught every once in a while for the next couple of years. We get to this service and I'm angry. And when I'm angry, I cry. And I just completely shut down. Like, I'll be over here. So I laid on this tiny bench with my back to the group. Like, it was this long room. They were on one side and I was way over here. I just could not. And I might have drifted to sleep. When I find that when I'm in churches now, I fall asleep because I don't want to be there. So my body just like disassociates. I just fall asleep because I don't want to be there. So it got to the part where the minister is like ready to heal people or listen or channel or whatever. And I'm like, here we go. Here's this song and dance that I'm so familiar with. And he said, I'm seeing a picture of a woman's wrist. And it's your right wrist, and it's kind of like right here. You did something, and it's not a big deal, but it does catch every once in a while, and it's sharp pain. And I was just like, anybody's fucking wrist can hurt like that. He just kept going. He's like, you have like dark hair or something. I was like, and my husband was like, honey, that's you. That's you. You should go up. I'm like, don't you dare. Don't you dare bring attention to me. And all of this is so crazy because, again, a couple years prior, I would have been like, he's talking about me. Finally, I got the lottery. Like, God noticed me. So validating. I would be like running down there. I'd be the first one. And here I was now on this other side where I'm like, I will explode if you bring attention to me. I will be so upset. And he just kept going into more details. And finally, Dave was like, you have to, he's talking about you. Like, don't make him feel bad, kind of a thing. And maybe it was like, it's you. So you need to go. And I started crying because I was mad. And I'm crying walking up there. People are probably thinking that I'm crying because I'm touched. And actually, I'm just really angry. Here's my wrist. And he prays over it. And I go home that night like trying to be like hurt again. It was gone. And I haven't felt a sharp catch in that wrist since. And I was so angry because I was like, I worshiped you and I tried so hard to play your game for so long, and now I'm done, and you're like trying to win me back with this shit. it was like I received it, but I didn't make that happen. And at a time when I'm misbehaving and I am done with church, now is when I am healed. You know how fucking long I would sit up at night and pray for you to heal other things. And now you just do it now that I hate everybody in this room and I'm going off on my own and again misbehaving. It's like it's not explainable. Just um I was just being a brat. Understandably, I'm in my corner there because I'd had enough of that shit. Eventually, we got involved in another church. I did not want to go. I remember crying the entire service that at that church too because I did not want to be there and it wound up being an absolute fucking disaster. I swore off church ever since. It's like those girlfriends or boyfriends that always find the worst people. I'm like, I attract churches like some people attract bad husbands. Like my picker is off. Please don't ask me to go back. That wrist situation, that experience happened maybe 2006 or 7. Fast forward to 2016, where I was really spinning out in my marriage. I found myself longing to have an affair. I would write about it in my journal. I just need a window. I just need to find some other married person that also needs a window so that we don't make it messy, that it's not involved. We can just have our 5 minutes of fun and then, zip up and like get back in the game for another 7 years and try to make it through this marriage and keep my vows. And I remember in a way kind of being shocked that I had come to that because I judged adulterers so fucking hard. I mean, my daddy was an adulterer. Oh, so many men growing up. Like TV really affected me, and watching men, mostly men on TV, just kind of created this huge well of anger and judgment towards men. And it's like the person that points the finger eventually gets it pointed right back. It's like, okay, you have some time in the fire now and see how it feels. And once again, I was in a season of like, I cannot believe myself right now. I am spinning out. That's the only way I could think of. I am spinning out. I'm gonna fuck up. I know I'm gonna fuck up. And I had kind of started talking to this guy that just kind of busted into my DMs one night after a big argument with Dave. It's like the wolves smell you. Oh, I smell that this person is having conflict in their marriage. Now is the time I'm going to send them a dick pic. And that is what happened. So I took that opportunity as someone, this is my window of someone to talk to. It lasted a week, but I scared myself in how far I was willing to go just talking with somebody else. And I was out in a country road coming back from a client that lived way out in the country. It was springtime, the fields were beautiful. And I just remember thinking, everything is so beautiful around me, and I just feel like I'm floating in all of this. And I felt so overcome with like, I can't believe I'm feeling this way, and yet I feel so trapped in my marriage, and I don't know how I'm going to make it to forever. I can't do this, and I'm scared, and I don't, it was just this, it was like being tossed in an ocean, just couldn't come up for air. And I'm driving, and I'm just agonizing over this situation, and I feel something rolling up. And I was like, fuck you, God. I can't believe I don't pray. I don't want to pray to you. I'm done praying because it doesn't do any good. And I gave you all my prayers. And it was such a joke. And it was all in my head. And as I'm driving, that feeling came up and I'm like, this is bullshit. And I just was like, fuck it. And I started speaking in another language, clear words. And I had gone to that weird, crazy church in college where they taught us how to speak in tongues. And they'd call it being filled with the Spirit and getting your prayer language. We're all going to pray. We all should be praying in prayer languages. We all need to have it. So come on up here and we'll pray for you. And of course, anything that sounds cool and magical, I want that. So I'd go out for prayer and they'd pray for me and nothing would come out. Other people's stories would be like they got struck with it and they would just talk. But stuff like that didn't happen to me because I forced things to happen. And then they're like, hey, if you didn't get your language, that's okay. Think of a really weird word and just repeat it over and over and over and over and over until it just starts to flow into other words. And again, it was all very cerebral, forcing and making things happen. And so I did that and I was like, wow, I can't. Such a fucking joke. So yeah, our church was all about like, we're going to pray in the Spirit right now. Everybody pray in your prayer language. So we're just like, blah, 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 just outwardly expressing this language that we have. And here I am in the middle of a country road. And no one is around to hear it. Nobody prayed it to happen. And what's really interesting is some things, like in the Bible, there's been some experiences where someone is praying in tongues and another person actually understands what they're saying. I mean, that's not beyond happening because we're on this planet where all sorts of weird things happen. But after that experience in the car, I realized this language is personal. And it doesn't come from my head. It came from my toenails. And I knew every word I said. It was coming out and almost sounded like an African language. And it was from my stomach. It was like finally my heart was able to talk and my brain didn't know what was happening and finally was being taken out of the game. It's like, can we bypass her brain? She always gets involved and tries to force things. She can't accept things. She wants to try to manage things. Let's just bypass her brain. We are tired of waiting. Like, shut up, let the heart speak. And so really, I call it my heart language when I had been so out of touch with my heart that I didn't know I didn't know what was true for me. I didn't know what my truth was. I didn't know what my heart said because my brain was always bypassing. And here it's finally getting to talk. And as it's speaking in all these weird words, it's like I'm two people. My brain is listening and it's like, yes, 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 you are saying exactly what I've been trying to put into words, but I can't. And she just like emptied out. And it seemed like every time I'd get into my car, I'd shut the door, blah, it would come out again. I'm like, whatever. I guess I'm praying now. Whatever. I'm just going to let it happen. I don't understand why now, when I'm at my worst, I have done nothing to earn this. I have done nothing to behave myself into this. But I'm getting some insights. So I will keep allowing this language to come up every time I get in my car because it's helping me get clarity and it's comforting me right now because I'm so scared. And there was one night several months later, I'm driving home. It's late. It's cold outside. It's dark. Coming home from the gym. I don't want to go home. And this prayer comes out, and I'm speaking in this other language. And this message of, I am doing so very little right now. You have no idea. Like, this is somebody that forced things to happen, that moved into this beat up house and never rested. I was constantly working on improving it. And I was a blogger, so my whole life was a blog post. I could never just cook a meal. I had to make it into a blog post. I couldn't just fix something in the house. I had to bring out the camera and the lighting and make it a blog post. My life was exhausting. And I stopped doing all of that. This was December. I did my last project that October. I'm like, I don't care anymore. I don't give a fuck anymore about trying to improve my marriage or improve this house. I don't give a shit. And here I was doing the least of everything I had ever done before. And yet I couldn't help but feel so loved. I was still terrified. I still had no idea where things were going. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I should not be feeling loved right now. I should not be having the privilege of speaking directly to my heart or to God or whatever. I'm doing the least I've ever done, and I am feeling the most love that I ever have. That really has become, in a way, my faith. And it seems like when we are just surrendered to who we are and not trying to force and be perfect is when spirit, when God, when love shows up. I'm so not interested in rules because rules made me a hard, tired, bitter person. And when nothing made sense, when the rules were like turned upside down and twisted into like a fourth dimension, and suddenly this person that's sinning, that is cursing God, that doesn't pray, that is having an affair, is feeling more love than ever. Maybe that's something to press into. I felt like I was so plastic before being broken, and that I couldn't really connect with people because there was always this, but you're not doing things right. You're not behaving. I can't let you into my bubble because my holiness will be tainted. I became real and softened, became human. Friendships blossomed. And I felt so relieved to be on the side of the broken people. It was such a relief. It took so much pressure off to be a broken one. Yeah, I fucked up too now. I have my own I fucked up story instead of I can't relate to you because I'm being really good over here to stay safe. As far as tying in these two concepts of my spiritual life, my religious past, and this concept of doing without understanding, those experiences have helped me release my grip in other areas. I can I can force this situation with all of my might, because in my mind, there should be no reason that you can't make things happen. And at the same time, I know that you can't make things happen. So if it's not there in your heart, if you don't have the desire or the heart to do it, I wouldn't even say desire. Sometimes you don't have the desire and you need to do things. But if the heart isn't there, if it's just not working, don't force it. For even this podcast, the idea to do it was important. Doing it was important. And now taking a break from it is important. None of it makes sense, especially to someone that's like, if you start something, you need to finish it. I don't even know what finish is, but you need to carry on, don't quit. None of it makes sense. And I don't have to figure it out. I can show up as my authentic self. I can check in with my heart and not force things. It's interesting. There was a long period of time that I did the praying thing because I did not understand my heart, and it helped. It was like my heart had a lot to catch me up on. I don't pray like that anymore. I feel like I don't need to because I know what my heart says now. I'm connected. This is connected now. And if I get into a place where life is a big mystery and I've gone into my head again and I'm disconnected from my heart, I'm sure I will start speaking like that again. Surrendering to the season, not with a giving up mindset, but I am going to preserve my energy for things that are in the moment, that are go time. And if this is not go time and I'm spending all my energy pouring it into go time, hoping things will go, that's not going to end up anywhere. I will preserve my energy for the go times so that I can do exactly what I need to do until it stops making sense to keep doing it. That is not a Western mindset. That is not a path to success. That is not being diligent, maybe even being a good worker, not being faithful. Flaky generations. You young people are flaky. Whatever. What I do will be juicy 100% when it's meant to be. So I hope that's encouraging for you. If you're still here and haven't ran away from my interesting experiences, thank you. And thank you for all of you who have watched and listened up to this point. We will just call this season 1. And season 2 may not have 18 episodes. They may have 2. They may have 3. We'll see. But I really do appreciate all the love, the messages, the encouragement that I've received from you so far. And I really am happy because I remember as a blogger, I was like, I'm just got to keep driving this thing into the ground until I just gave up everything and didn't give a flip. And I thought, am I going to do the same thing with this podcast that I did with the blog? Absolutely not, because head and heart are connected. And I don't have to force this and not quit. I can let it flow and not understand it all the meanwhile. So in the meantime, we will see you whenever. Have a great summer. Thank you so much for listening. Join us on Instagram at SWUT Podcast. That's SWUTPODCAST for further conversations, insights, and behind-the-scenes content from today's episode. And for the complete viewing experience, tune into Shall We Unpack This on YouTube. We'll see you next week.